Hey guys, tonight for life groups, we're back in the story of Daniel, and we're actually going to be on page 153 in your life group journals, and we're looking at Daniel chapter 6. For Daniel, this is yet another one of these moments where it's a defining moment in his life. Kind of what I would call a flag in the sand moment, where you can sort of look back and go, it was there. It was there in that moment where I could take a flag and boom, put it right down in the ground and mark it and go, that was a defining moment for me and in my life. For Daniel, this is one of those moments, another one of those moments. Daniel chapter 6, page 153 of your journals, we're going to read this passage of scripture. All right, starting Daniel chapter 6, verse 1, it says, "It pleased Darius to appoint 120 satraps to rule throughout the kingdom, with 3 administrators over them, one of whom was Daniel. Now the satraps were made accountable to them so that the king might not suffer loss. Now Daniel was distinguished, he was so distinguished, or had so distinguished himself among the administrators and the other satraps by his exceptional qualities that the king planned to set him over the entire kingdom. Now at this, the administrators and the satraps, they tried to find grounds for charges against Daniel in his conduct of government affairs, but they were unable to do so. They couldn't find any corruption in him because he was trustworthy, and neither was he corrupt nor negligent. Finally, these men said this, "We'll never find any basis for charges against this man Daniel, unless it has something to do with the law of his God." Verse 6, "So these administrators and these satraps, they went as a group to the king and they said, may King Darius live forever. The royal administrators, the prefects, the satraps, the advisors, and the governors, we've all agreed that the king should issue an edict and enforce the decree that anyone who prays to any god or any human being during the next 30 days, except to you, King Darius, your majesty, they shall be thrown into the lion's den. Now, your majesty, issue this decree and put it into writing so it can't be altered, in accordance to the law of the Medes and the Persians, which can't be repealed." So King Darius puts this decree in writing. Verse 10, "Now when Daniel learned that the decree had been published, he went home immediately to his upstairs room where the windows opened towards Jerusalem. And 3 times a day he got down on his knees and he prayed, and he gave thanks to his God just as he had done before. Then these men, they went as a group and they found Daniel praying, and Daniel praying and asking God for help. So they went to the king and they spoke to him about his royal decree. 'Did you not publish a decree that during the next 30 days, anyone who prays to any god or any human except for you, your majesty, that they would then be thrown into the lion's den?' The king answered, 'The decree stands, and in accordance with the law of the Medes and the Persians, which that law cannot be repealed. It cannot be changed.' Well, then they said to the king, 'Well, Daniel, who is one of the exiles from Judah, he's paying no attention to you, your majesty, or to the decree that you put in writing, and he is still praying 3 times a day.' And when the king heard this, he was greatly distressed." Don't move past that too quickly. It says that King Darius was greatly distressed, and he was determined to try to rescue Daniel and make every effort until sundown to try to save him. Something about this man's life, even though he had broken a law that Darius had been kind of duped into getting and moving forward, Darius, when he found out that he was praying to his God 3 times a day, it said he was greatly distressed because there was something special about Daniel's life. And the king recognized it. Verse 15, "Then the men went as a group to King Darius, and they said to him, 'Remember, your majesty, that according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, no decree or an edict that the king issues can be changed.' So the king gave the order. And they brought Daniel, they threw him in the lion's den, and the king said to Daniel, "May your God, whom you serve continually, may he rescue you." Well, then a stone was brought, and it was placed over the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it, and with his own signet ring, and with the rings of the other nobles, Daniel's situation, it was all done so Daniel's situation might not be changed. And the king returned to his palace, and he spent the night with no food. He didn't eat, he didn't have any entertainment, and he couldn't sleep. Verse 19, at the first light of dawn, the king got up and he hurried to the lion's den. When he came near to the den, he called out to Daniel in an anguished voice. And Daniel, the servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, has he been able to rescue you from the lion's den? And in verse 21, Daniel answers. He cries back out, and he says, "May the king live forever. My God sent his angel, and he shut the mouths of the lions. They've not hurt me, because I have been found innocent in his sight, nor have I ever done any wrong before you, your majesty." The king was overjoyed, and he gave orders to lift Daniel out of the den. And then when Daniel was lifted from the den, and he saw that there was no wound found on him, because he had trusted in his God. At the king's command, the men who had falsely accused Daniel, they were brought in, and then they were thrown into the lion's den along with their families, their wives, and their kids. And before they reached the floor of the den, the lions overpowered them and crushed all of their bones. Then King Darius wrote to all the nations and peoples, to every language in all of the earth. He says, "May you prosper greatly. I issue this decree that in every part of my kingdom, people must fear and have reverence the God of Daniel. For God, he is the living God. He endures forever. His kingdom will not be destroyed. His dominion will never end. He rescues and saves. He performs signs and wonders in the heavens and on the earth." And he rescued Daniel from the power of the lions. So Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus from Persia. So there's a couple of things that jump out from this story that we're just going to kind of unpack before you start talking through your groups. The first thing, and it really just comes back to this flag in the sand moment. I mean, this is a big deal. This dude was thrown into a lion's den, multiple lions in there. They would have eaten him, killed him, devoured him. It would have been nothing. Except God did something big. And in that moment, we see that's the flag in the sand moment where Daniel can point back to it was there, that God showed up and did something incredible. So the three things that jump out from this story, from this moment in Daniel's life, we see this. First thing is this: he was a person of character. Daniel was a person of character. Daniel stayed true to who he was. And know this, like Daniel wasn't perfect. I know that we could look and go, man, they never found anything wrong with him. He was innocent. He wasn't perfect. He was just like you and me. He was a man. He was a human being. He wasn't perfect. He just never veered away from what was most important to him. And that was his relationship with Christ. He was a person of character, and he drilled down in his identity being a child of God. He was a person of character. King Darius noted that, and we can see it all over the story. And obviously, we can see that the Lord valued that in Daniel. He was a person of character. The second thing that we see is that he was a person of faith. Daniel was a person of faith. Daniel shouted faith right back into the face of fear. Right? He had been thrown into this lion's den. That's scary, okay? And I know, like for you and me, we aren't literally facing an execution of being thrown into a lion's den and losing our lives. But you know what? Metaphorically, sometimes it feels like that's what the situation that we're dealing with kind of feels like, right? It's not necessarily a lion's den, but it might as well be, because it doesn't seem like this is a thing I could ever conquer, I can ever get the upper hand on, that I'll ever be able to get ahead of, or that I'll ever be able to control. It's always this, it's always something, and I'm never gonna beat this, whatever that is. I'm never gonna conquer that. Daniel was a person of faith, and he shouted faith right back into the face of fear. How did he do that? we know that he prayed. We know that even when the king's edict had been passed, 3 times a day, he would go upstairs into his room and he would look out that window towards Jerusalem and he would pray. Why does it say that he was looking out the window towards Jerusalem? Jerusalem points back to where his story started. That was home, and he is no longer in home, but his eyes are locked in to this moment in time, another flag in the sand moment of his life, when Daniel can kind of look back and go, it was there when I first met the Lord. It was there when God became real to me. And you and I have these moments, and when we face our fears, we can shout faith back into the face of our fears. Why? Because we've seen God be faithful before, haven't we? We have. So hang on, my brothers and my sisters. Daniel was a person of character, and he was a person of faith, and he spent time praying. And here's something I really like about this. I dig this. You know, this flag in the sand moment for Daniel, this lion's den moment, it was one day of his life. It was one day, and it was a big day. Flag in the sand, look what God did, remarkable. It was a big day, but it was one day. And that one day was set up and had everything to do with where it went. You could draw it all the way back to day one. That one day traces all the way back to when day one started for Daniel, when he said, you know what, I'm going to put in these habits, these behaviors, these basic fundamental building blocks of my faith, these disciplines like prayer. And I'm not going to waver or punt from doing what I feel is right and what's best in light of God. How are we doing with that? How are you doing with that? Especially when you're facing big, ugly, scary, fearful things that feel like a lion's den situation for you. Are you still running to the Father and spending time with Him in His Word and spending time with prayer and spending time with the right kind of community and having accountability and leaning in on one another for that? That's what we see Daniel doing. That's what we need to do too. He was a person of character and he was a person of faith. We also see that he was a person who trusted God. He trusted God. We see that he trusted God to fight his biggest battles for him. He didn't try to go into that lion's den as if he was going to conquer these lions by himself. He didn't see that was the thing that he had to do. No, he left that up to God. He put everything into his hands. He submitted and he prayed and he trusted that God's idea of better was going to be better than his. Come what may. Come what may. I don't know if Daniel knew those lions were going to have their mouths closed and shut, and he would be protected by angels in that den overnight. I don't know if he knew the blueprint plan to how that was going to go down. I don't. But I believe he just trusted God. If God was going to rescue him from this situation, he's like, great, he gets the glory. If not, come what may, I'm going to spend the rest of my life with the Lord. I believe he just trusted God with whatever outcome would come. He trusted, which is what we need to do. We see that he was a person of character, a person of faith, and a person who trusted God to fight his biggest battles. Okay, so the last thing that I just want to be able to say with this flag in the sand moment, we see that Daniel, of all of these good qualities that he had in his life, he was great, but it wasn't about Daniel. Daniel didn't try to rob God of his glory. He gave it all to God. And we see right here what the king had to say about it. Because Darius, the king, wrote to all the nations and all the peoples in every language and all the earth. What did the king say because of what he saw God do through Daniel's life? He said, for he is the living God, and he endures forever. His kingdom will not be destroyed. His dominion will never end. He rescues and he saves. He performs the signs and wonders, not Daniel, but God. He performs those signs and wonders in the heavens and the earth, and he rescued Daniel from the power of the lions. He is the one who is mighty. He is the Lord of lords and the King of kings, and he is in control, and he's got this, whatever this is. So take that flag in the sand moment for you and give all the glory over to God. I hope you guys have a great life group. I want you to know that we love you. We're praying for you. I pray that this conversation right here can be another flag in the sand moment for each of you. We love you. Have a great life group.